Hello, welcome everyone. I am Megan Ostler, your registered dietitian with Belle, and today I want to make metabolism a little less mysterious. So we've been getting lots of questions about metabolism, and so that's our topic for today. A lot of people have been told that weight loss is slow or harder than expected because their metabolism is broken. Usually that's not the most accurate explanation though, and metabolism is not just a switch that either is on or off or broken or working. It's a combination of a lot of different energy using processes happening in your body all day long. So my goal for today is for you to understand what really affects it, what gets overhyped, and what actually helps in real life. So let's dive into Metabolism 101. But before we do, as always, we are going to start with our wins. So if you've come to previous lives, you know that we do this every week for a few different reasons. I also do this with all of my clients at the beginning of our one-on-one sessions. The reason for this is that number one, it activates our prefrontal cortex, makes us a little bit better at problem solving and creativity and thinking long term. It also gives us a little hit of dopamine, some proof of progress, and all of that helps with building confidence, self-efficacy, and the belief that we can do this long term. So it helps improve long-term success. I hope that you've started doing it and you've started writing them down. Daily would be amazing, but at least weekly during our lives. So I'm going to give you 20 seconds to jot down your win from the week. Just start thinking through, how did you show up for yourself? What is a win, big or small, that you're proud of this week? All right, 20 seconds, go. All right. My clients often are a little reluctant to do this, but when I'm like, it's only 20 seconds every day, just for 20 seconds. When they start to do it, they see the power that just 20 seconds can bring. All right, so back to metabolism. When most people talk about metabolism, they're usually thinking about how many calories they burn at rest. And that is certainly part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. Metabolism refers to total energy your body uses to stay alive, to digest food, to move throughout the day, and to exercise. So before we talk about whether metabolism can be on or off or slow down or adapt, it helps to first understand what the different parts of metabolism are. So a helpful way to think about the metabolism is a few main buckets. Resting metabolic rate is the energy that your body uses to just keep you alive. The thermic effect of food is the energy it takes to digest, absorb, and process the food that you eat. Energy activity is your planned movement, like workouts. And NEAT stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is a mouthful and why we just call it NEAT. Which is all of the movement that you do outside of formal exercise. So this is your walking, it's your standing, your chores, your errands, the general activity, right? Not the things that are breaking a sweat per se, just your general movement. And this matters because when people say that metabolism has changed, it's usually not just one of these. It's usually multiple buckets or categories that are involved in making their metabolism change or adapt. So we're going to talk about these a little bit more. Resting metabolic rate is usually the biggest part of your energy daily expenditure. So this is usually what takes up the most energy. This is the energy your body uses to do all of the background work that keeps you alive and functioning, even when you're at total rest. So it covers things like breathing, circulation, temperature regulation, organ function, and all of the small cellular tasks that your body is constantly performing. And even at rest, our bodies are super busy. So highly active organs are constantly using energy, like our hearts, right? Or our brains. So our brains only make up about 2% of our body weight, but they use about 20% of our resting energy at rest. So our resting energy. So they're highly active, using lots of energy, even though they make up a very small percentage of our body. And the biggest drivers of resting metabolic rate are body size and fat-free mass. So in simple terms, larger bodies usually require more energy, and bodies with more lean tissue tend to use more energy than bodies with less. So Organ activity matters because some tissues are more metabolically active than others, such as muscle. And age and sex do matter, but often less than people assume once we take body composition into consideration. So once we start talking about muscle mass and we compare equal muscle mass and equal body size, age and sex don't matter quite as much. So that doesn't mean that they don't matter. Genetics matter. It's just helpful to kind of pull away from that idea of like, I'm good or bad, or just because I'm female, I can't, fix my metabolism. It usually comes down to body composition. And resting metabolic rate is not random. A lot of it comes down to how much tissue the body has to maintain and how metabolically active that tissue is. So, understanding that body size and lean mass strongly affect resting metabolism makes it a lot more sense that it would change as your weight changes, right? As the mass decreases, then RMR decreases with it. Smaller bodies just need less energy. And as body weight goes down, energy needs usually go down too. There's a simple less mass to carry, move, maintain as before. And that means that the calorie deficit that helped to create weight loss earlier may not stay the same over time, even if your habits haven't changed. So this is part of the reason why progress often slows down after the initial drop. It doesn't automatically mean that your body is doing something abnormal. In many cases, it just means that your body's changed, so your energy needs have changed too. So if you were eating 1,800 calories, that might have created a really big a really big deficit at a higher weight. But then as your weight changed, then your needs changed, and now your deficit isn't quite as big. And so 1,800 calories is no longer creating a large deficit for weight loss. But it's not just lean mass that can change our RMR. Our bodies can also adapt in ways that help to protect against further mass loss. So when energy intake stays low for long periods of time, our body store and the body stores are coming down. The body doesn't just act or passively let that happen, right? It responds. It starts becoming a little bit more conservative with energy. This is the basic concept behind metabolic adaptation. It is not the same thing as being simply just in a smaller body. The math doesn't math. When it comes to that, there is more happening there. There's adaptation happening. We're becoming more efficient. And so somebody in that same body size that has never changed their weight will have a higher RMR than someone who has lowered their weight to that weight. So we can see adaptation happening. So the reason that our body is doing that, though, is it's protecting us. It's trying to respond to lower energy availability, and its goal is efficiency and survival. It's not trying to sabotage you. It's just trying to protect you. Much like if you saw your bank account dropping and maybe your income coming in less, you probably shift your spending habits to protect from that getting too low or to protect your future, your fiscal future. So your body's kind of doing the same thing. It's watching, uh-oh, our savings account is depleting and our income is getting lower. We better change some things up. And that response is why weight loss can become more challenging over time. But it's not just about math changing, it's that our biology is responding and the math is also changing. So once that adaptive response starts happening, it can show up in a few different ways in all four of the buckets that we talked about with metabolism. So our resting energy expenditure can decrease somewhat. Our daily movement, though, also drops, often without us realizing it. Our body tends to help us feel a little bit more tired, less restless, just less driven to move in general. And this also often happens without us really realizing it. And then hunger and food thoughts tend to increase, cravings tend to increase. So our body is not only trying to conserve energy on the output side, it's also trying to encourage energy to increase on the input side, right? It's trying to increase our income and reduce our spending. Another piece of that body another piece is that the body may become a little more energy efficient. So in simple terms, those same tasks or the same workouts that used to produce a large output are now producing a slightly smaller output. So adaptation is not always dramatic though. Oftentimes people will think that it's like we're talking hundreds and hundreds of calories. It's usually not that much on the output side. The adaptation is a little bit, and then it's usually the input side. Our cravings and our hunger tend to make the biggest difference. So that's part of why weight loss is not just about effort. It's the body actively responding to protect itself, conserve energy on both sides of the energy equation. And when we understand that, we can start to make tweaks to both sides and understanding, how do my habits impact both sides? What can I do to help with this? So another bucket in your metabolism buckets, right, is the thermic effect of food. So this is the energy that your body uses to digest, absorb, transport, process everything that you eat. So food is not just calories coming in, it is also part of that output equation. So processing food also costs energy. For most mixed diets, it's usually about 5 to 15% of your total daily energy expenditure. And protein has the highest thermic effect of food. So carbohydrates are in the middle, fat is the lowest. And that's one of the reasons that people will talk about, protein boosting your metabolism. It doesn't boost your metabolism, it just has a higher thermic effect of food. So it takes more energy to break down and process protein, which can be really helpful when we're trying to stay full and create an energy deficit, right? Because it's costing more energy to process, plus it's keeping us fuller longer and helping both sides of the equation. So it's also helping to support lean mass, which also helps us to keep our RMR higher. One other helpful point here, though, is that if someone is eating very low amount of food, then their thermic effect of food has also gone down. So simply just eating less food decreases your energy output as well. But I would say probably the most overlooked part that I see with my clients is NEAT. So again, that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And this includes all the movement that we do outside of formal workouts, like standing up more or walking through the grocery store or pacing while on our phone or cleaning the kitchen or carrying groceries or just moving throughout the day, fidgeting, right? Dancing in the kitchen. And this matters because when our energy intake is lower or our body weight is coming down, people tend to not burn as much at rest, and then they also tend to move less. And so our NEAT tends to just decrease. We sit a little bit more, we feel a little less restless, we take fewer steps, we just have less of a drive to be physically active. So even if we're doing our 60 minutes of, gym workout, it may not be that big of an impact when our NEAT has decreased. So I see this with my clients a lot. Usually their NEAT makes up a larger portion of their calorie expenditure or their energy expenditure than their exercise does. Because the exercise is happening a few times a week for an hour. NEAT is often happening for 12 to 14 hours a day, every day. And that's a huge impact. So when someone says, I'm still exercising, so why does it feel like I'm not losing weight? Why is this harder? NEAT might be part of that answer. It's just quietly dropped. And I see this a lot with my clients. If we're not tracking it, then their NEAT will slightly drop. They're just moving a little bit less. And when we are tracking it, they'll see that. They'll be like, whoa, I was getting 10,000 steps. I thought I was still getting 10,000, but I tracked again and I'm getting 6. They're like, I felt like I'm doing the same amount of effort. And that's just their body slightly shifting things to conserve some energy. So for a lot of my clients, we track NEAT. We make sure that they're building in NEAT throughout their day, whether that's exercise snacks throughout the day, whether that's using a standing desk or a walking pad or tracking steps outside of their workouts. So sure, that's wonderful that you ran 3 miles. How many steps are you getting the other 12 hours of your day? So at this point, you can see metabolism is not just one number changing in the background. When energy intake stays low and body weight comes down, adaptation can affect all parts of metabolism, our EAT, our TEF, our NEAT, and our RMR. So resting metabolic rate is going to decrease slightly with less mass and less muscle. The thermic effect of food is going to decrease because less food is coming in. Exercise output might decrease because we have less muscle, and our energy might be lower, so we have less available for performance and recovery. And NEAT often drops quietly because we just feel a little more tired, a little less driven to move. And this is why thinking about metabolism in these 4 different buckets matters for our future, because it's going to affect our hunger, our energy, our movement, our training, our recovery, and how sustainable this process feels. It's also going to help explain why underfueling can make this process a lot harder, not easier. When we continue to drop our calories more and more, all four of these buckets get impacted more and more. And that doesn't help us to maintain higher metabolism. That is going to cause further and further adaptation, which is important for understanding on a GLP, especially if you decide to come off. So how do we protect our metabolism? How do we keep it higher? How do we provide or prevent large amounts of adaptation? You're always going to have some adaptation. That's just our bodies doing their job. And there are a lot of products that promise boosting metabolism, right? Fixing the metabolism, but most of them are very, very overhyped. Yes, there's different foods that can have small amounts of a energy boost, like spicy foods or caffeine or things like that. But the big levers, the things that actually make a difference, are going to be these basics: the body composition, adequate intake, enough protein, movement, strength training, and what you can sustain for years, not weeks. And this is actually really good news because it means that you don't have to chase gimmicks. You don't have to overhaul everything. You don't have to buy a million products. You just need a plan that you can live with long enough for it to be effective. And that's the key. What can you do? How can you maintain a deficit long term until it's effective? Because slow and steady is the name of the game. If adaptation can affect multiple buckets, then supporting metabolism also means supporting all three or all four of those buckets. We want to support our resting metabolic rate. We want to protect our lean mass as much as possible. We want to support our thermic effect of food by eating enough food and prioritizing protein rather than chronically eating as little as possible. We want to support our energy activity, but we also need to make sure that we're supporting our NEAT, protecting that daily movement, not just our workouts. So saying that we need to fix metabolism is usually the wrong frame. A better frame is supporting the systems that make up metabolism. So we need to support the four buckets that make up metabolism. All right, so that was our mini lesson on Metabolism 101. Hopefully you have a better idea of what impacts metabolism and how you can affect them. But let's shift into questions. So each week I'll be taking a few of the questions submitted by you and answering them. If your question isn't answered, stay tuned, it will be. And if you want to submit a question, then all you need to do is email care@joinbelle.com and it will be added to next week's queue. So we got a lot of metabolism questions. First one is, I'm losing about 1 to a half a pound a week. Wish I were losing more in the belly area. Any ideas what to take or what I may be doing wrong? First, I want to highlight that losing half a pound to 1 pound per week is actually awesome. That's like a really steady, sustainable rate of fat loss. And from a physiological standpoint, that's right in the range that we want for preserving lean muscle and supporting long-term success. This is not too much of a calorie deficit that's going to cause huge effects with our metabolic rate and things like that, or losing too much muscle. So bravo, like this is great. I know it feels too slow, but it's wonderful if you can just be like patient with it. However, when it comes to belly fat specifically, I wish I had a better answer for you. Unfortunately, we can't spot reduce when it comes to fat loss. Where our body loses fat first is largely influenced by genetics and hormones and overall body composition over time. So composition changes usually are going to be reflecting of those things. The abdominal area is often one of the last places to change, especially for women and especially for women over the age of about like 40, 35 to 40. As we start to enter into perimenopause, those hormonal shifts prioritize belly fat distribution. And so unfortunately, at that point, we can't cause belly fat to go away on its own unless we just decrease the overall size of our whole body. So we can't spot reduce, but we can reduce by just reducing everything, right? So as our whole body shrinks, our belly will shrink with it, but it might be the last thing to shrink. And I know that's not what you want to hear. I wish it wasn't that way either. I wish I could spot reduce certain areas, right? But it really kind of comes down to genetics. So what you're seeing is not a sign that something's wrong. It's just a sign that you got to be a little bit more patient, and the belly area is usually going to take a little bit more time. So you might notice other areas changing first: face, arms, chest areas can shrink much faster, and the belly just might be a little more time. So I wish I had a better answer. I'm sorry, I don't. If there's a product out there that's promising to spot reduce, Research does not support that. So I would say that's probably not an accurate product. Okay, if my metabolism adapts, does that mean my metabolism is damaged? No. And this is a really important distinction. So metabolic adaptation is not metabolic damage. It's just your body doing exactly what it's designed to do. It's adjusting to changes in energy intake and body size to keep you alive and to keep you healthy. When your body weight decreases or your intake stays low, your body's just going to become more efficient. It's doing its job. It's not broken, it's efficient. And that can look like slightly lower energy resting needs. It can look like decreased NEAT or changes in energy and hunger levels. But this isn't permanent damage. It's just a responsive system. And it can shift again. Like when your environment and intake and behaviors change, it can shift. So I would say instead of the terminology of broken or fixed, no, adapted is really just all it is. Has your metabolism adapted? Can we adapt it the other direction? For some people, we can. Do I need to eat less and less over time to keep losing weight? This is a really common belief. And also, I think one of the biggest reasons that people get stuck. Because while energy needs may decrease slightly as your body weight decreases, continuing to eat less and less, usually not the most effective way to have sustainable weight loss. That's often going to backfire because over restriction is going to impact all four of those metabolic buckets, right? So it's going to lower our energy intake. It's going to lower our NEAT. It's going to decrease our performance and our exercise. So we're burning less there. And then our body's going to respond to that with hunger cues and trying to get more fuel. And so it can create this yo-yoing effect. So basically every metabolism bucket is going to be impacted negatively by underfueling. Not to mention like your bone health and your hormone health and your thyroid health are all also going to be impacted by underfueling. So instead of constantly reducing intake, a much more effective approach would be to like maintain adequate nutrition, support activity and strength training, allow your body to adapt without pushing it deeper into restriction and deeper into adaptation. And at some point, you're going to find the maintenance point. And from there, being able to eat more will come down to those metabolism buckets again. If you build more muscle, you'll need more. If you increase your NEAT, you'll need more. Some people are able to successfully reverse diet and get their RMR higher as well. But I would say individual response to this varies. So not everybody can really successfully increase their RMR, but some people can. But everyone can increase their output with NEAT and muscle mass and body composition. So in short, no. I would find a gentle deficit that you can maintain and then protect those other buckets of metabolism. And then just give it time. For some of my clients, it can take 2 to 3 years for them to get to their goal weight, which I know is not what you want to hear. I'm sorry. But when we take that much time and they're in a gentle deficit, we don't continually slash their calories. In fact, they usually don't go lower than a certain threshold because I don't want them to. I don't want them to negatively impact their health. And so it depends on the person, but usually high teens, like 1800-ish, is like as low as we're going to go. And then at that point, we work at the other things. We start to focus more on protein, focus more on fiber, focus more on NEAT, focus more on recovery and training and building muscle. Because I don't want my clients to go too low. I don't want them to continuously adapt and continuously lower and lower and lower and lower their calories. So we might lower them to a certain point, and then we're going to work on the other buckets of metabolism. Okay, if my weight has plateaued, does that mean my metabolism has slowed down? Maybe. A plateau doesn't automatically mean that your metabolism is slowing down, but it often reflects just some adjustments that we talked about in this lesson, right? But that might not be your RMR. It might be stress, increasing hunger, or things like that. So as your body weight decreases, your total energy needs also decrease. And on top of that, small changes can happen across multiple areas. So just because you've plateaued, it doesn't necessarily impact your metabolism. It might impact other areas of your life that are impacting, emotional eating or things like that. But if that has happened, then I would start to look at what are those buckets in metabolism looking like? How's your NEAT? How's your working out? How much are you eating? Are you getting enough protein? What's your body composition like? And then keep in mind that plateaus are super normal and they're often your body just creating or reaching a new equilibrium. Our bodies love homeostasis. They want to stay the same. And so it might hit an equilibrium and be like, this feels good. And then kind of like push against going any lower. So that's not a sign that something's broken. It's just a signal to reassess your system. Like, are you supporting all those buckets of metabolism? And instead of reacting drastically and cutting intake even more, I would again check your consistency with your habits, check your protein, check your strength training, check your NEAT, especially the NEAT. You can make small adjustments if needed, but you also might just need to give it time. It might just need a little bit, like, again, it could not be a metabolism thing. It could be like you're going through a stressful period and you need to look at your emotional eating. Um, but I also think plateaus can be a great time to just pause and reflect on your overall quality of life. Because if your weight has stalled and it's maybe not the weight that you had in your head as your goal weight, but you feel really healthy and strong and active and resilient, and your lab work looks great, and you've got tons of energy, then it might be like, hey, your body's telling you this is a good weight for you. Like this is a happy weight for you. And further loss might negatively impact your muscle or your energy or your hormone health. So obviously I'm speaking generalities here, but a lot of my clients find that what they thought was the weight that they were going to feel their best at, based on the number on the scale, actually wasn't. And sometimes it was a little higher because that higher reflected higher muscle mass and more strength and more resiliency. And so just maybe pause on that. Like if you hit a plateau, and I mean, if you're like way far away from your weight, then like it's normal. We can make some adjustments and we'll continue to go down. But if you're like within 5, 10 pounds, then I would maybe like reflect and be like, could this just be that I've put on some more muscle, and how's my quality of life? And maybe this is a good weight for me. But again, that I'm not speaking, and I don't know for you, but just a time to reflect. And if you need help with breaking a plateau or getting past a plateau, um, what we covered in today's lesson, but also reach out. We can help you. Okay, so in summary, your metabolism isn't broken. It's just responsive, and it's changing with your body size, your body composition, your food intake, your movement, and weight loss itself. So instead of asking, how do I force my body to burn more? A better question is, how do I support my body in a way that's going to protect these buckets, protect my lean mass, keep me well nourished, help me stay really consistent for years. And that's going to be a lot more useful and a much more compassionate way to approach this, and usually a lot more effective too. So sometimes it's going to come down to just patience, which I know is not what my clients want to hear. But thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next week. Remember to submit your questions to care@joinbelle.com. See you next week.